You're being paranoid. My mother's voice was silk over steel as she set down her wine glass. Your grandmother wanted the business kept in experienced hands. I looked around the mahogany conference table at my family. Mom sat at the head, perfectly composed in her cream Chanel suit. My sister Victoria lounged to her right, scrolling through her phone with that bored entitlement she'd perfected at Wharton. Dad nodded along. Like always, his eyes never quite meeting mine. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows of Sterling and Associates law firm, Seattle's rain hammered against the glass. Inside, I was the only one who seemed to notice the temperature had dropped. Experienced hands, I repeated slowly. Grandma Rose built that company from her kitchen table. She told me stories about the early days every Sunday. And that's lovely, Maya, Mom said, her smile not reaching her eyes. But running a successful boutique hotel chain requires more than sentimental memories, which is why the updated will reflects her final wishes. Victoria receives the controlling shares, and you receive a generous cash settlement. She slid a document across the table. $150,000. Most 27-year-olds would be grateful. I stared at the number. It was more money than I'd ever seen at once. More than I'd make in 3 years as a junior accountant at Morrison & Blake. But something felt wrong. The kind of wrong that makes your stomach turn even when you can't articulate why. I want to see Grandma's actual will, I said. The room went still. Victoria looked up from her phone. Dad's hand froze halfway to his coffee cup. You're looking at it? Mom said, her voice cooling several degrees. No, I mean the original, the one Grandma had notarized. This is notarized. Mom tapped the document with one manicured nail. By John Davidson, at Crown Notary. Dated March 15th. I'd done my homework during the bathroom break. Grandma passed away March 12th. The silence stretched. Outside, a fairy horn echoed across Puget Sound. There was an amendment, Dad finally said, his voice thin, right before she passed. She wanted to make sure the business stayed. Paul, I'll handle this. Mom cut him off. She turned to me, and I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Something cold. Maya, I understand you're grieving. We all are. But your grandmother specifically asked that we avoid family conflict over this. She made her decision. She knew Victoria had the business acumen to grow the hotels into something truly remarkable. While I got checks for birthdays and lectures about being too sensitive for the real world, I said quietly, "Don't be dramatic," Victoria said, not looking up from her phone. Grandma loved you. She just knew your strengths were elsewhere. You're good with numbers, spreadsheets, that kind of thing. Not leadership. There it was. The same dismissal I'd heard my entire life. Maya's good at the boring stuff. Maya's too anxious for client meetings. Maya wouldn't understand. I thought about Grandma Rose in her garden, pruning her roses, while telling me about negotiating with suppliers who thought a woman couldn't run a business. Never let them see you doubt yourself, she'd said. And never sign anything without reading the fine print twice. I'd like a copy of this updated will, I said. And I'd like to see the original documents from Grandma's estate attorney, Patricia Chen. Mom's jaw tightened. Patricia retired last year. These documents came from our family attorney, Robert Sterling. She gestured vaguely toward the building we were in. Convenient, I said. Excuse me? Nothing. I stood up, gathering my bag. I'll sign once I've had a chance to review everything thoroughly. That's reasonable, right? Maya Dad started. I'm not being difficult, I said, looking at him directly. I'm being careful. Grandma would want that. I left before anyone could respond. The rain had turned into a full downpour by the time I reached my Honda in the parking garage. My hands were shaking as I gripped the steering wheel. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe grief was making me see shadows where there were none. But I couldn't shake the image of Grandma Rose last Thanksgiving, barely 2 months before the stroke that killed her. We'd been alone in the kitchen, and she'd squeezed my hand. The hotels will be yours someday, she'd whispered. All 3 of them. You understand what they mean? Your mother sees profit margins. But you see people. That's what makes a real leader. I thought she was just being kind. Grandma always had a soft spot for me, the quieter granddaughter who'd rather help her bake than attend Victoria's charity galas. But now, I pulled out my phone and called Patricia Chen's office. The receptionist told me she'd retired but could provide contact information if it was urgent. It's about the Rose Sterling estate, I said. 15 minutes later, I was sitting in a coffee shop near Pike Place Market, laptop open, rain streaming down the windows. Patricia had agreed to meet me the next day, but she'd sounded confused. I handled your grandmother's estate planning for 30 years, she'd said. The will was straightforward. Equal distribution of shares among her 3 grandchildren, with provisions that they couldn't be sold outside the family for 10 years. She was very specific about that. 3 grandchildren, not just Victoria. 3. My brother Nathan had died in a car accident when he was 19, 5 years ago. The will would have been updated after that. But equal distribution between Victoria and me meant 50% each. Not controlling shares for Victoria? Not a cash settlement for the less experienced daughter? Equal. I opened a new browser tab and searched for King County Superior Court records. Washington State requires all wills to be filed with the court after death. It took me 20 minutes to navigate the system, but I found it. Estate of Rose Marie Sterling. Filed March 20th. I downloaded the PDF with fingers that had gone numb. The will was 8 pages long, dated February 3rd, 2 years earlier, notarized by Patricia Chen's office. I read it 3 times. I, Rose Marie Sterling, being of sound mind and body, do hereby bequeath my assets as follows. The Sterling Boutique Hotels, comprising properties in Seattle, Portland, and Vancouver, BC, shall be divided equally between my granddaughters, Victoria Ann Sterling and Maya Rose Sterling, with each receiving 50% shares. There were provisions about keeping the business in the family, about neither sister being able to sell without the other's consent, about quarterly meetings and shared decision-making, but nothing about Victoria having control, nothing about Maya being too inexperienced, nothing about $150,000 settlements. My coffee had gone cold. Outside, tourists hurried past with Pike Place market bags, laughing despite the rain. I took a screenshot of the title page, the signature page, and the distribution clause. Then I called my Aunt Jennifer, Dad's sister. She was a corporate attorney in Portland, and she'd always been straight with me. Maya, honey, she answered on the second ring. How are you holding up? Aunt Jen, I need legal advice. Off the record. Her voice shifted. What happened? I explained everything. The meeting, the updated will, the courthouse document that contradicted it. The silence on the other end lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Aunt Jen, I'm here. Her voice had gone hard. Do not sign anything. Do you understand me? Nothing. I wasn't planning to, but, Maya, listen to me very carefully. What you're describing is will fraud. It's a felony. If someone created a fake will to redirect inheritance, that's criminal. My stomach dropped. You think, Mom? I don't think anything yet, but I'm getting on a plane tonight. Don't talk to anyone about this. Not your parents. Not Victoria. Can you stay somewhere other than your apartment? Why? Because if this is what it looks like, you're threatening a multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. Be careful. She hung up. I sat there, staring at my laptop screen. The rain kept falling. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Maya, let's not make this complicated. The settlement is generous. Think about what you could do with $150,000. Another buzz. Victoria, seriously? You're going to be difficult about this? Grow up. I turned my phone face down and opened a new search tab. Robert Sterling, the attorney who'd supposedly notarized the updated will. His LinkedIn showed he'd joined Sterling & Associates in January 3 months ago. He'd graduated from law school in 2023. He was 25 years old. He'd been a lawyer for less than 2 years when he supposedly witnessed Grandma's deathbed amendment to her will. I clicked on his profile picture. Typical young attorney headshot, trying to look experienced, but something about his eyes. I opened Facebook, Instagram, ran his name through every search I could think of. There, a photo from New Year's Eve. Robert Sterling at a party, arm around a blonde woman in a sparkly dress. Victoria. The caption, NYE with my brilliant lawyer boyfriend. 2025 is going to be our year. Dated January 1st, 2 months before Grandma died. I screenshotted it. Then I went through Victoria's social media with the methodical focus I usually reserved for auditing expense reports. There were other photos. Victoria and Robert at a Seahawks game in December, at a wine bar in November, at a Halloween party in October. They'd been dating for at least 5 months before Grandma passed away. And now Robert was the notary on a will that gave Victoria everything. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was rage. The quiet, burning kind that had been building for 27 years of being dismissed, overlooked, and told I was too sensitive to understand. I pulled up the document Mom had given me and examined it closely. The signature looked like Grandma's, the swooping R, the careful S. But I'd helped Grandma with paperwork for years. I knew her signature. I zoomed in on the digital image. The signature was identical, not similar. Identical. The exact same flourish on the R, the exact same spacing, the same tiny smudge at the end of the final G. I'd audited enough corporate documents to know people don't sign their names identically twice. There's always variation. Always. Unless someone copied and pasted a digital signature, I opened the document properties, something I did automatically for every financial document that crossed my desk at work. Creation date. Author. Modification history. Created. The 14th of March 2025, 2:47 p.m., 2 days after Grandma died. Author. V. Sterling. MacBook. Victoria's laptop. I sat back, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it over the espresso machine hissing behind the counter. They'd done it. Mom and Victoria had actually done it. They'd created a fake will, used Robert to notarize it, and planned to steal my inheritance. The question was, what did I do about it? I could walk away, take the $150,000 and avoid the nuclear fallout. Keep the fragile peace of family dinners and holidays. Pretend I didn't know. Or I could fight. I thought about Grandma Rose again. Not the gentle woman who taught me to bake lavender shortbread, but the fierce entrepreneur who'd outmaneuvered male competitors for decades. Who'd built a boutique hotel empire from nothing. Who'd specifically left that empire to me and Victoria equally, because she believed in us both. I pulled up my email and started typing. Dear Aunt Jennifer, I've found additional evidence, attaching screenshots. The notary is Victoria's boyfriend. The document was created after Grandma's death. I want to fight this. Then I opened a new email to Patricia Chen, Grandma's real attorney. Dear Miss Chen, thank you for agreeing to meet. I have evidence that a fraudulent will has been created. I'd like to discuss filing a contest with the probate court. And finally, one more. To my boss at Morrison and Blake, the senior partner who'd mentored me. Dear Mr. Morrison, I need to request family leave. I'm dealing with an estate matter that requires my full attention. I apologize for the short notice. I sent all three. Then I ordered another coffee and started building my case. By the time Aunt Jennifer's plane landed at 11 p.m., I had a 40-page document ready. Timeline, evidence, screenshots, metadata, contact information for Patricia Chen, a list of witnesses who could testify to Grandma's intentions. We met at her hotel near SeaTac, and I spread everything across the desk in her room. She read in silence for 20 minutes. Maya, she finally said, looking up. This is airtight. So, what do? We file an emergency petition with probate court tomorrow morning. We request an injunction preventing any transfer of assets until the will contest is resolved. And then, she smiled, and it wasn't kind. Then we watch your mother's perfect world collapse. She'll deny everything. Of course she will. But the metadata doesn't lie. Neither does the courthouse will, or Patricia Chen's testimony, or the fact that Robert Sterling is dating Victoria. She closed my laptop. Your mother made one critical mistake. What? She assumed you were too nice to fight back. I thought about that. About all the times I'd stayed quiet to keep the peace. About being called paranoid, dramatic, too sensitive. I'm done being nice, I said. Aunt Jennifer squeezed my hand. Good, because tomorrow morning, we go to war. The emergency petition was filed at 9 a.m. By noon, the court had issued a temporary injunction freezing all assets of the Rose Sterling estate. My phone started ringing at 12:07. Mom. Victoria. Dad. Victoria again. Mom again. I didn't answer. Instead, I drove to Portland with Aunt Jennifer for a meeting with Patricia Chen. The elderly attorney sat across from us in her home office, surrounded by law books and photos of 40 years of practice. I reviewed the document you sent, she said. It's a forgery. A good one, but a forgery. Rose was meticulous. She would never have changed her will without discussing it with me first. And she certainly wouldn't have left everything to one grandchild. She told me explicitly that she wanted you and Victoria to learn to work together. Will you testify to that? Aunt Jennifer asked. Absolutely. Patricia's voice was steel. Rose was my client and my friend for 3 decades. Someone has desecrated her final wishes, and I won't allow it. We spent 3 hours going over Grandma's mental state, her intentions, her conversations about the business. Patricia had notes from every meeting, every revision, every discussion. She was so proud of you, Maya, Patricia said at one point. She told me you had your great-grandfather's head for numbers, said you could look at a hotel's books and spot problems everyone else missed. I had to look away. I wouldn't cry. Not yet. By the time we drove back to Seattle, it was dark. Aunt Jennifer dropped me at my apartment and made me promise to keep my doors locked. I walked inside to find my phone showing 37 missed calls. There was also a voice message from Mom. I almost deleted it, but something made me listen. Maya. Her voice was different. Raw. We need to talk. Please. I'm your mother. Whatever you think is happening, we can discuss this. Family doesn't sue family. Call me back. I deleted it. Then I called my cousin Sarah, Aunt Jennifer's daughter, who was a paralegal. If I needed to know about someone's financial history, where would I look? Public records, she said immediately. Court judgments, liens, bankruptcy filings. Why? Just curious. I spent that night doing what I did best, following the money. Sterling and Associates, the law firm Mom had chosen, had been founded in January 2025. Robert Sterling was listed as the senior partner. The only partner. I dug deeper. Robert Sterling had $340,000 in student loan debt. He'd graduated mid-tier. His first job out of law school had been contract review for $55,000 a year. He'd been let go after 6 months. Then suddenly, in January, he'd opened his own firm in downtown Seattle. Class A office space, mahogany furniture, a full-time paralegal. Average cost to start a law firm in Seattle, $100,000 minimum. Where had a broke 25-year-old gotten that kind of money? I cross-referenced the firm's formation documents. Registered agent, Victoria Ann Sterling. Initial investment, $125,000. Victoria had bankrolled her boyfriend's law firm, the same boyfriend who'd notarized a will giving her my inheritance. I took screenshots of everything and sent them to Aunt Jennifer. Her response came immediately. They're going down. The probate hearing was scheduled for the following Monday. That gave me 4 days to prepare. On Thursday, Mom showed up at my office. She sailed past the receptionist at Morrison and Blake like she owned the place, found my cubicle, and stood there in her Burberry coat, radiating barely controlled fury. We need to talk, she said. Now. My coworker Amanda glanced over, eyes wide. I'm working, I said calmly. Maya Rose Sterling, I am your mother. You will. I'll meet you in conference room C, I interrupted. 5 minutes. I didn't move until she left. Then I gathered my files, my laptop, and my phone set to record. Mom was pacing when I entered the conference room. She whirled around. What do you think you're doing? Contesting a fraudulent will. Fraudulent? Her laugh was sharp. You ungrateful. The will you presented was created March 14th on Victoria's laptop, I said. Grandma died March 12th. The signature is a copied digital image. The notary is Victoria's boyfriend, who she funded. The real will, filed with King County Superior Court, leaves me and Victoria equal shares. Mom's face went white. You have no proof. I have metadata. I have Patricia Chen's testimony. I have the courthouse document. I have financial records showing Victoria paid for Robert's law firm. I set my laptop on the table and turned it toward her. I have everything. She stared at the screen, at the evidence laid out in neat rows, at 30 years of careful planning crumbling in front of her. You don't understand, she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. The hotels are struggling. We need capital. Victoria has connections, investors. She can turn them into something worth 10 times what they are now. Your grandmother was brilliant, but she was old-fashioned. She didn't understand modern hospitality markets. So you committed fraud. I protected the family legacy. You stole from me, I said quietly. You looked me in the eye and called me paranoid while you forged a will to cut me out. We gave you $150,000. That's not yours to give. Mom's hands were shaking. I'd never seen her anything less than perfectly composed. It was almost satisfying. Almost. If you go through with this, she said, you'll destroy this family. Your father will never forgive you. Victoria will never speak to you again. You'll be alone. I thought about that. About family dinners where I was always the outsider. About holidays where Victoria got the spotlight and I got the leftovers. About 27 years of being told I wasn't quite enough. I've been alone at this table my whole life, I said. I just didn't realize it until now. I stood up. See you in court, Mom. I walked out, leaving her standing there. When I got back to my desk, my hands were shaking so hard I could barely type. Amanda appeared with tea. You okay? She whispered. No, I said honestly, but I will be. That weekend, Dad tried. He showed up at my apartment Saturday morning with coffee and apology croissants. Maya, sweetheart, he said when I opened the door. Can we talk? I almost said no, but he looked old suddenly, tired. I let him in. We sat in my tiny living room, rain pattering against the windows. He didn't speak for a long time. I didn't know, he finally said. About the will. Your mother said Grandma had changed her mind, and I believed her. I always believe her. You saw the document, I said. You were there when she pushed me to sign. I know. He rubbed his face. I know, and I'm sorry. I should have questioned it. Should have asked more questions. But your mother is very convincing, and I'm very weak. It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to me. Why? I asked. Why does she hate me so much? She doesn't hate you. He sighed. She's afraid of you. Afraid? You're like your grandmother. Rose terrified your mother because she couldn't be controlled, couldn't be managed. She built her own empire and didn't need anyone's permission. He smiled sadly. You have that same steel core. Your mother saw it years ago. That's why she spent your whole life trying to convince you that you're fragile. I stared at him. That's twisted. I know. He stood up. I know, and I'm sorry. For all of it. For not protecting you. For taking the easy road. He paused at the door. I'll testify if you need me to. About what I know. Dad, she's my wife, but you're my daughter, and it's about time I acted like it. He left. I sat there for a long time, watching the rain. Monday morning arrived gray and cold. I dressed in my most professional suit, navy blue, fitted, the one I wore to important client meetings. Aunt Jennifer picked me up at 7 a.m. Ready? She asked. No, I said, but let's do it anyway. King County Superior Court was exactly as imposing as I'd expected. All marble and echoes and hushed voices. Mom and Victoria were already there with Robert, who looked like he was trying not to throw up. Good. Patricia Chen arrived with her own attorney. She nodded at me, calm and certain. The hearing lasted 3 hours. Robert Sterling went first, testifying that he'd notarized the will in good faith. Aunt Jennifer destroyed him in cross-examination. Mr. Sterling, how much did Miss Victoria Sterling invest in your law firm? I don't see how that's... Please answer the question. 10美元. And when did this investment occur? January 2025. 2 months before you notarized a will, leaving everything to your investor? Your girlfriend? I didn't. It's not. No further questions. Patricia Chen testified next. She was devastating. 30 years of knowing Grandma. Detailed notes about the will's intent. Testimony about Grandma's mental clarity and her explicit wishes for equal distribution. Rose wanted her granddaughters to learn to work together, Patricia said firmly. She believed Maya had the financial mind and Victoria had the vision. Together, they could take the hotels to new heights. Apart, they'd fail. Then came the forensic document analyst Aunt Jennifer had hired. He displayed the metadata on a big screen for the judge. The document in question was created the 14th of March 2025 at 2:47 p.m. The signature is a digital copy-paste from a previous document. The author is listed as V. Sterling, MacBook. This is not a will executed by the deceased. This is a forgery. The courtroom was silent. The judge looked at Mom. Mrs. Sterling, do you have anything to say? Mom stood. She was pale but composed. Your Honor, I believe this document to be authentic. My daughter Victoria handled the legal. Mom, stop! Victoria's voice was sharp. She stood up, and I saw tears on her face. Real tears. Just stop. Everyone turned to look at her. I did it, Victoria said. I created the will. I copied Grandma's signature. I thought I was protecting the business, protecting her legacy. Maya's good with numbers, but she doesn't understand vision, strategy, growth. I could turn the hotels into a real empire, and she'd just maintain status quo. So you committed fraud, the judge said flatly. I protected what Grandma built. You stole from your sister. Victoria looked at me then. Really looked at me. You would have run those hotels into the ground. You don't know that, I said quietly. You never gave me a chance to prove otherwise. The judge made his ruling from the bench. The fraudulent will was voided. The original will stood. Victoria and I each received 50% of Sterling Boutique hotels. And Victoria faced criminal charges for will forgery and fraud. Mom tried to approach me as we left the courtroom, but Aunt Jennifer stepped between us. Don't, she said. You've done enough. Outside, the rain had stopped. Patricia Chen hugged me. Your grandmother would be proud, she said. I hope she was right. The next 6 months were a blur of lawyers, depositions, and damage control. Victoria took a plea deal probation, community service, and permanent removal from the hotel business. Robert lost his law license. Mom filed for divorce from Dad. He moved to Portland to be near Aunt Jennifer, and I took over Sterling Boutique Hotels. Turned out, I was pretty good at it. I hired a new management team, restructured operations, used my accounting background to identify inefficiencies. Grandma and Mom had both missed. Within a year, we'd increased profitability by 30%. Victoria was right about one thing: I didn't have her vision. But I had something better. I had Grandma's steady hand and her belief that the foundation matters more than the flash. On what would have been Grandma's 80th birthday, I visited her grave. Someone had left roses. Dad, probably. I added my own. I fought for it, I told her. Like you taught me. And I won. The wind rustled through the cemetery trees, and I could almost hear her voice. Never let them see you doubt yourself. I didn't anymore. I was Rose Sterling's granddaughter. I had steel in my spine and numbers in my blood, and I was done being underestimated. I walked back to my car, a sensible Toyota, because I was still me, and pulled out my phone. There was an email from the Portland Hotel Association about their annual conference. We'd like to invite you as a keynote speaker, it read. Topic: Building Legacy, How Young Women Can Honor the Past While Creating the Future. I smiled and hit reply. I'd be honored to speak, because I wasn't just Rose Sterling's quiet granddaughter anymore. I was Maya Sterling, CEO, and I had a story to tell.